Hello friends and everyone, welcome back to Netcode-Hub channel. In this video, we're going to look at how we can integrate Google Authentication in our web API and then consume it in our Blazor WebAssembly standalone. Now, why is this useful? Anytime that you want to go on with Google Authentication, instead of you creating an own endpoint to generate tokens and etc., you want to rely on Google for that. Okay, and it also allows users to sign in directly from Google account into your application without necessarily needing to provide username, full name, email address, and all the registration processes, right? Good. Aside from that, you can also manipulate the response from the Google server. Maybe if you want to add custom claims, such as maybe role, name, username, or any relevant information that you want to attach to the claims or attach to the token, you can do that and then forward it back to the client. So all that the client or the Blazor WebAssembly needs to do is to consume this token, keep it, and then anytime that you want to make a call to your API, then it has to add this token to the header and I'll make an API call. That is amazing. So we're going to have a look on how we can do that today. And maybe later on, we focus on how we can integrate with REST token. And in case if you want to add custom claims, get username, profile, image, and etc. Maybe later on, we're going to look at that. Now I have created a simple diagram. Yeah, a simple diagram. And this diagram is going to explain to us how these processes are going to occur. Let me share the screen so you can see what I am talking about. All right, so I do believe you can see my screen now. Now I've created a simple diagram to explain this. Let me put it out here. And that is all what we're going to be using. So first of all, we're going to be using a custom authentication handler to handle this. Because you know that we want to interact with the Google API with our own or personal API that we have created in place of the client. That is the Blazor WebAssembly or the user. So that means you're going to be having two APIs here from the Google one and also our own custom API that we have created. Now let's take a look with how this processes flow with the diagram over here. Now we see the first stage here, it is the user. As you can see from here, I have added the order. So that's the ordering 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 stages for this authentication. Now the first stage is where we have the Blazor, that is the user. So this is the user. Let's assume this is a client of Blazor WebAssembly or the user. You're going to make a request to our web API. Now, this is our own custom web API that we are going to create or going to add. Now, this API is responsible for generating a login link. So after a user makes request with API, our API is going to generate a login link over here. That is a step 2. Now, this link will be sent to the user. As you can see from here, it is sent to the user. And then this link will going to be open in the browser. So although it will be sent to the user takes this link and then opens it in the browser for the login. Now, this login is attached to Google, not our own. So that's why I have put it up here. That is stage 3. Now, from the login, user interact directly to the Google API. So we have over here, you see it has no connection with that API for the login. So directly access to this Google API. And that is where the Google authentication happens. So user need to provide username and password and all the necessary credentials that the user need to provide for this login to be successful. Now, after that, there's going to be a callback. So when you're going to create an app, we need to specify a callback. Now, this callback is what Google is going to send as soon as the registration or the login is successful. So we have a callback, which is callback instead of sending back to the client, which is a Blazor WebAssembly. We want to intercept that. So we want to send this to our API that we created. So user logs in, we get a callback over here, and then with this callback, it comes in with code, authentication code. Now with that code, we cannot use that code for HTTP request. So we need to exchange that code for a token or access token code. So we're going to handle that in place of this user or this client. our API is going to handle that over here and now exchange the token and get the access code. So when you have this access code, we can also get a refresh token. But as indicated earlier on, we want to make this simple. Maybe later videos, we try to cover this, how you can work with a refresh token and a whole lot. But for now, let's stick to this. So the server exchange the token for an access token. Okay, so let me say the server exchange the code, that is the right one, for this access token. Now, when the server gets this access token, which belongs to this user, server cannot make an HTTP request to this user for this user to get the access token. So this is what the server is going to do. This API is going to keep the token and then generate a user link. This is a user link comprising of user ID. So that is this one. Now this user ID will be sent to this API, not the API, the Blazor WebAssembly. Now it's going to open it in a browser, and then in that, when the page initializes, you want to grab this key, which is the user ID sent to this specific user, and then make an HTTP request to the same server again for the access token. And in case you want to add some claims, you can also attach to it in the form of a model. So we can create model here and then pass in the access token and on the claims, which will then be consumed by the user. Now, when this is consumed by the user needs to save this token, and then in the authentication state provider from this user is going to use this token or the claims to authenticate the component. And anytime a call will make to this API, it will then need to provide this access token to the header and I'll make a call to this API. I believe you've gotten the flow. So that is exactly what we're going to be doing. I'll leave this this diagram. I'll make it available, I think, in the description, or let's see, I'll make it available. So you can also go through in case you want to do that. Okay, so we're going to create projects. We want to start everything afresh. So for the new ones that they haven't touched down Visual Studio before, we're going to create a project from scratch. We're going to handle this from start to finish. All right, so now that this is okay, let's jump into our Visual Studio and I'll start working with this. But before we do that, if you know you haven't subscribed, I always say that is the time to do it. And also, like this video if you learn something new, or if you like how the video is going, give me thumbs up to this. Okay, now let's see. So I'm going to minimize this and then we're going to create project here. So minimize this. I'm going to launch my Visual Studio. Since we're going to be using two projects here, like our Blazor WebAssembly project and our Web API project, definitely for authentication, there are some models that we're going to be using for both API and our client. So in that, normally what I do is I do create a shell library, so I do not duplicate this model in each of the projects. So I want to have a centralized place for all these models to be, so that we can add this project to each of the projects as shared. They can use them together. So let's create solution for that. We create first thing is to create solution. We add our API project. We add our Blazor WebAssembly project. So 3 projects. Let's do it. So now that we have this project created, we're going to share this shell library to each of the projects. The next thing to do here is to create a token. Let's actually work with the shell library. We need a token which will be used by both the API and the client. The next thing that we're going to be doing is we need to create an app in Google. And the most important thing is we're going to be adding scope and also our authorized URL, which is going to be a callback. This is very important that we need to do. So launch your browser and I'll go to console.cloud.google.com. And I believe these are the first time of you visiting that app before. We have it over here. So console.cloud.google.com. I think maybe I'll consider putting this link in the video description so you can just go and click on that. But it's just quite simple. Now, when you come here, click on this to create project. So this is create new project. I have project already created. I have limited number of projects I need to create. So I don't want to create this, but I have one already. So you click on this and you can just click on new project, then give it a name and then create it to get this project created. Once you're done with that, you come to this part, go to dashboard. And in the dashboard, we want to focus on an API and services. So click on that. We need to work on the two links provided over here. The first one is our OAuth consent screen and then our credential. So here, let's first tackle with this. Now that is where we need to provide the necessary information that this app will need from the user. So we can make it as an external, since you're going to be making it for test with Google account. Then click on create. So once you have here, give it a name. So Blazor Wasm Auth or etc. Then supported email, just choose an email over here. You can add logo for this, but for demo, you can skip this because when you get to production, that is where you need to apply your app logo and stuff. Then if you want to get it from a specific domain, then put it over here. But for now, we want to skip that. Now for developer contact, put in your email address over here. So let me just grab what I have in here, training. And then you can just paste it from where you have the developer. You can save and then continue on. Now you come to the scope. Now with the scope, maybe later on, we're going to delve into this scope. You can click on add or remove scope. And then here you can see if you want to get user information like email, profile picture, and open ID, you can just select these three. And then you click on update. So you have this here. Then from your end, you click on save and continue. Now from this test user, you need to add an email which will be used for the testing. You have to make sure that when you add only an email, that means you can test this app with only that email. You can add, I think, 100 emails here for testing. As you can see, allowed user capture to app verification is 100. Maybe you can add 100, you can add more to test this and just pass in your email here. And you can also add another email, so you can also test with another one as well. So you have it over there that you can save and continue. So you're done with this. Now that you're done, go back to dashboard. And now here we need to create our OAuth credential for this. Click on that. Then choose not the API key, but this client ID because you want to get client ID and a client secret. Select the app type, and since you're bidding for web app, then we're going to choose that. Give it name, Blazor Wasm Auth. That is my app name. Then from here, authorize redirect. This is I think the most important of all. You have to make sure that you provide a callback to your API. So when you go back to your API, let's check our API is running on which port. You go to the properties, check from the line settings, and here it is running on this 7281, right? Now this 7281, maybe I can modify this as 7102. Then grab this, go back, and then paste it here. And with this, we want to have access to, let's say, authorize, and then call back. Then click on save to create this. So when you create this, you're going to have your client ID and client secret. I'm not going to create because I have one created already. But when you create this, you're going to have your client ID and client secret. Copy these two keys here. That is what you need in order for you to authenticate user with your app in Google. Great. So once you are done with that, we can go ahead and set up a configuration section to keep this record. So in the app setting.json, let's handle this over there. So we're going to create Google section, client ID, client secret, application name, and I'll redirect URI. So this is what you need to make this work. As you can see from this, you have provide the values over there because we spoke about this, so you know what to do, right? Now that we are good, we have our config set up. Let's go and add our connection string. We're going to be implementing this with, I think, SQLite because this is authentication and it's a demo. So we want to use SQLite so we can have this database attached to our application. Once you're done with this, let's go and create a model which will be used to save information or record from the Google API into a database before we call this callback or return to the client. So these are the response from the Google API. As soon as we make a callback has been issued and we exchange the code for token, we get a user, no, not the user ID. User ID we're going to create ourselves. We're going to have the access token. We're going to have a refresh token. We're going to have a sparse in seconds, and then the ID token, and we're going to have this issued at. So we want to store this so that as soon as the client makes a request with the user ID, we can fetch it from the database and I return it to the client. The next thing that we're going to be doing is to create our DB context. So let's do it and specify credentials as database in it. So I think before we come to this, the first thing that we needed to do was to install packages which we'll be using. I think it escaped me. All right, so I think let's go and do that. Let's install all the packages that you're going to be using. For our API UI, I am using Swagger instead of Scala because I know I love Swagger. So I'm using that one as backup. If you want to use Scala, I think it's quite simple. I've done a video on how you can integrate Scala in your API. So let's install these packages to our API, what we will need. So these are the packages that we will need in our API building. We have all this. So pause the video if you haven't done installing all this. Pause and install them. So when you get to the swashback, you can decide to use Scala or choose this. But I'm using this choice. All right. So now let's go ahead and then work with an DB context. Once you're done with this, we're going to be creating our services. Now we're going to have, I think, 2 or 3 services. Now, there are some services that or some properties that we're going to be using them often. And we don't want to duplicate this. We want to skip that. So let's put that as a service. So anytime that you call a service, we can inject it and now use the same values that we have set. So let's create that. So when you look at the service that we have created now, we have 3 interfaces or methods here in our interface. In that we having this get scope, and on this get scope, I told you before when we are creating the scope in our app, we selected these 3, right? Open ID, username, and also user email, and then the profile. We need to provide the scope in there, and now our client secret, which comprises of the client ID and the secret. So we can use this inbuilt client secret from this OAuth 2, and then populate it with that and return a new instance of it. So we have these 3 methods that we're going to be using often. And that's the reason why we have this here. So we can inject it, and there you go. All right, so the next thing that we're going to be doing is we want to create an service which will be responsible for generating the authentication or authorization link to Google, which will be sent to the client. And also we want to have a method which is going to exchange the token, the code for the access token, and other relevant information. So let's work on that. So this service is actually the pivot of all that we are going to be doing. When you have a close look at this, you see that we are using all the services in the O2 services from Google, and this is actually the heart of it. Let's see what you're doing. Now we have this interface with this method specified as indicated earlier on. We want to get the URL, we want to exchange code for token, and then you want to validate the token. Okay, so the first thing that we're doing here is if we look at the order of this, we want to get this authentication URL, and in that we want to know we have our client secret, we have our scope, and our prompt is to add refresh token. For now, we are adding it so we can see it in the database, but later on, we also see another video how we can work with this refresh token. Then we have our redirect URL, and that is what I prepared it here from our config section. So we add this component together to generate a URL, and we can return it. So we see that this return a string, which is in the form of the URL, which will be sent to the client to open the browser link or tab and then sign into Google. Now, the next thing I'm going to do here is, as soon as the user signs in, we're going to have a callback, which is going to hit this with a code. So with that code, we're going to exchange for the access token. So we get the flow from here, and now we are still getting this client secret and scope. That's the reason why I created a service for it. Other than that, we have been using config. But with this service, you see just a line, we can get all what we need. Then we also get the token. So this is going to get this token by specifying the user type, the code, which is going to be sent from the Google API, and then the redirect URL that we have specified, both in an app for the Google Console app and now this API app too. Then we want to save this to a database so we can keep track of it. We generate the user ID, which will be sent to the user. We're using the guild.newguild to get a new guild ID. If you want to use different ID, you can just go ahead and specify it here. And then save the changes as you know, because when you add, you need to persist it. So we're going to persist it by using this save changes to get it done. Then I'm going to return a new user credential and then specify these parameters in there and go out with it. Okay, then the next one I'm going to be doing is to validate the token. This will be called as soon as the user makes a request. Now, you first want to check if that token is found, because you know that the user is going to add this token to the header and then make a call with it. Now, when we receive it as an API, we're going to check in the database, do we have this token? If yes, then we can move on. But in case we do not, then know what you're doing, right? We want to return this exception. In case we have it, then we want to still use the scope and on the secret, we get the authorization code flow with that. Then we want to get this token response. So with this response, all the properties or the values here, we have them. So we're going to get it from this credential and assign to the prime properties that we have in this class. Then you want to return a new user credential. So this user credential is going to handle the access token, the refresh token, expire in second, the ID token, and the issued date. In case maybe token is expired, this user credential is also going to tell. But for now, we are handling this to work with the access token without necessarily minor match on the refresh token. Maybe we do that in later videos. Okay, so this is what we need to make this work done. Now, after we have this service also created, we go to create our controller. We're going to be using this service in our controller. So let's get that. But before we're going to create a controller, we want to create a custom authentication handler, which is going to intercept the request from the user and then scrutinize it to see whether it has the token appended to the header or it doesn't have it. In case it does it, what are you going to do? I'm going to extract it, validate it from the service over here, and then move on with it. What I'm going to do is this a handler responsibility to do that. So let's create that too first before we handle our controller. All right, so this handler 2 is doing a great work here. Let's go through and see. We inherit from this authentication handler. Since we're going to create our own custom authentication handler, we need to inherit from that. And in here, from this handler authentication, this will be invoked anytime a request steps in. You want to check if that request contains this header. If it does, now if it doesn't, then we're going to do this. If it does, then we're going to get the authorization section. We want to check if it starts with this bearer, then we want to skip in case maybe it's a lowercase or uppercase, whatever. We want to skip the case. Then, in case it does, then we're going to get the access token from it. So we want to just have this bearer and then the length. Then from that, we want to validate the token that we have from here, from the header. So we're taking this bearer and add this space off because you know anytime they want to add bearer token to header, you need to specify this bearer and now space before. So you want to take it off and get the token itself. And here we want to validate it. This is going to return the user credential. Now this user credential, it has the access token, the refresh token, the time issued, and the user ID. No, that is a token ID. So you want to only get access to the access token, pass it on to this get credential, which is going to get it from the database because you have same record in the database. So you want to check it. In case it isn't found, it means the token is invalid. Then we return this invalid access token. So when you delete this access token from the database table, when the user logs in with the same token, you're going to return this because the token is no more available. Although the person has logged in with Google, but you can still manipulate the token. And then we have the claim. So here we want to also create claims. For now, we are having only the name ID. Later on, we're going to see how we can add the username, the profile, and all such. And then we want to create identity and I return the success. In that, we need to provide a ticket. So the ticket also contains or takes in a principal. So we create an instance of that and I'll specify the ID with the scheme. So we have the scheme over here as Google token or access token scheme, or you can give it any name of the scheme. It's still going to work. Okay, so that's what's going to happen here. Now, let's go and create a controller to handle that. So we go to the controllers folder, and then we're going to add a new authorized controller. So within our controllers, we're having three. This is a controller. We're having three endpoints. The first endpoint is to get the authorization URL, and this is straightforward. We have the callback from the server, and in there we want to exchange the code for token. We get it. We want to return to this client. We're going to create a component to the route of connect, and it's going to receive a parameter of user ID. And in that, the client is going to make a request to this endpoint. It's a callback request. And then we want to get from here, from the database table of credentials, and then return the access token and the user ID in the form of string. So you're going to serialize this model. So user needs to accept this token model as we created in the shared project, and then save it in the local or cookie storage. Okay, so that is what we're doing here. Now, the next thing that we need to do for this API to be active is to register the services that we have created and also our authentication service from Google as well. So let's do that in the program.ts file. So these are all the registration and the pipelines that we need to do in our program.cs file. We adding our, first of all, we adding our Swagger. We add database connection. We add Google service with a custom scheme that we created. Then in that, we want to add authorization service, and then we need to scope our services that we created with the interface and implementation for each. We add call so we can allow access to this endpoint through by client. So we specify the client address, and then we map the Swagger so we can use the UI, the interactive UI, and then we need to add this pipeline for authentication first before authorization. Okay, now that we are good in here, we're gonna, you see we have a weather forecast created already, right? So with the weather forecast controller, we want to authenticate this. So in here, we need to, when we use this authorized attribute, we then need to go ahead and specify a custom one that we have created. Okay, so we are good. Now let's build this project and then add migration. So let's go ahead and add migration to this. Oh, okay, so it works. Now we're going to run this API to check endpoints and see whether we're going to have an authorized link that we can log into Google. So our app is running over here, but it is not launching in the browser because we did not specify that. So let's go to Solution, check your launch settings in the Properties folder, and then here from the HTTPS launch browser, set this to true, and then specify the launch URL and set it up to Swagger. If you're using Scala, then it should be Scala/v1, which is version 1. Save this and rerun this again. So our endpoint is ready. Now let's go and authorize this. So let's get our URL. So this is the sign-in link. Let's grab this. I have my browser already opened. Let's paste it on and access this, which will then redirect us to our account. So click on this, and then you see, do you want to continue on? Yes, I have my Blazor, but unfortunately there's an issue. Okay, so the callback will not be executed. Let's check this out from our controller. So we are saying that you want to have an authorized. We should take off this now. And I think let's rerun this again. And then let's go and get the URL again. Okay. And let's make sure it is okay. I think we need to run it. It's not running. Okay, so again, get this URL and now grab this. The same browser with the same account. Let's open a new tab, paste it on, and then let's try to access this. So continue. And now let's see. Yes, so we can see that it has redirected to our Blazor app, which is 7078. Connect as a route, and then there's a user ID. But since our Blazor is not active, we could not access that. So that means this is working, right? So all these endpoints, we get a URL, callback is being made, then user can now grab this. So let's say let's assume we have our own URL. Let's grab only the user ID, because you know that with this, user needs to provide the ID to this endpoint, and then he can access this, right? So let's get the access token, pass the it here, get the access token, and that is your token. So this is user ID and this is access token, right? Now leave this one there, go to weather forecast and try to execute this. You should have 401 authorized. It means you need to provide an access token for that. Let me launch Postman. And that Postman, we're going to get access to this weather forecast. We're going to add this header as bearer. Okay, so that is good. And now let's put this here. Let's grab the address, which is weather forecast. Let's bring it here and paste it up. This is get. Let's go to the header authorization. This is bearer. Now let's remove digit and then pass on our access token from the request here. So grab this access token from here. And then let's go back to the Postman and add it. So space, check it out, space, and then paste it. Now let's see if you're going to have access to it, 200, and there you go, you have it. So we see that this is working. So how we are doing the UI here, we're going to be doing same in the Blazor WebAssembly. We're going to access this header, keep it in the local or cookie storage, and then make an HTTP call with that as an authorization header with the value of bearer and space and then the token. We're going to see that in the next video to finalize that. So alright guys, so we've seen how we can create our API to intercept between the user and the Google service. so that our API can generate authorization URL for login and then get a callback with a token and get the access token for the user. You've seen how it works. Now it is the turn of our Blazor WebAssembly to consume this token, access token, and append it to the HTTP header when making API call. And I'm going to do that in the next video. So check that one out. I believe you've gotten to where I am now. If you have any issue with following it, then put it in the comments below and I'll attend to you and help you sort it out. Also, if you haven't subscribed, then I do always say that is the time. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video and you enjoyed it as I did. All right, so I'm going to catch up again till next time. Take care. Hello, friends and everyone. Welcome back to Netcode-Hub channel. We are still working on integrating Google Authentication in Web API and consuming it in our Blazor WebAssembly app as our front end. This is the second video, and I believe you've watched the first video. In that, we spoke about how we can generate URL for login, direct access Google API, how we can have a callback, exchange code for access token, and then make it available, store that in database. Now in the client, we're going to make a call to this API and I'll get this access token, append it to the HTTP header, and I'll make an API call. So that's what we're going to be doing today. It's quite simple. Okay, so let me share my screen to what we did, and then let's continue from that. But if you haven't watched the first video, I think watching this video will not let you understand. Please check the video description or up there and check and watch that video first. I also make the playlist available. I think it's having 2 videos in it, and then I'm going to combine all these as one video as well, so making 3 videos in that playlist so you can watch them and I'll get used to that. All right, so let's see. I'm sharing my screen to the project that we started, which is demo Google Authentication and API and our Blazor WebAssembly. So I believe you can see the screen now, isn't it? So when you check our last video that we did, we were able to add this Blazor project to it, but we did not touch it. And this time around, we are going to handle that Blazor. We are done with our API. Now, let me tell you this. It is not only Blazor front end that can consume this API. If you are building app with React, Angular, whatever it is, since if you can only make an HTTP call, which is an API call or RESTful API call, there you go. You can still consume this. So maybe I am using Blazor WebAssembly today, but maybe if you want to use React, if you want to use any other framework, well, you're good. You can work with that. So try that and let me know how it's going. But today we're going to be using Blazor because that is what I love to do. Okay, so now within this, we need to install some packages for that. So I'm going to right click on dependencies, then manage get packages. I think we need 3 packages for this. The first one that we're going to be using is an HTTP extension.http. So let's get these packages installed quickly. All right, so these are the packages that we need. We need component.authorization, we need extension.http, and then we need extensions.local storage. That is one of my packages. Well, if we don't want to use my package, you can still use Crescenti's package, which is blazor.local storage. Or if you want to use cookie, I also have a package that you can use to manage cookie. So there is a package that I created, so you can use it or use any other external package that you feel okay using that. If it meets the context of this by adding or setting up the local storage and also retrieving values from it. All right, so get this installed. And the next thing I'm going to be doing is to create our hosted provider, which will be responsible for authenticating the user as soon as a page navigates. When you look at this auth state that we have created, we are injecting our local storage service from the Netcode-Hub, one of my packages. Start from that, we want to create a principal which takes in the default stuff, where meaning user here is not authenticated. Now, from the abstract method, it has an inbuilt method here, that's the get authentication async. Now, this method is going to get called as soon as you navigate to all components which have authorized components in them. We want to get the token from the local storage as string with the key that we have created. In case it isn't there, we want to return default, which means that the user is not authenticated. But in case we have the token from the local storage, then we want to deserialize it since it is already serialized. We want to deserialize that into a module of token which has two properties, access token and then the user ID. And you want to set the claim. Currently, we are having only user ID as a claim, so we are not having all the other detail of the user, such as the name, the email, and stuff. Maybe in the future video, we're going to see how we can work with that. Get all user claims from the Google Authentication service, and I'll set them as claims in here. But for now, we are having the user ID generated by our custom API that we have created. And then we want to return this auth state. And the next thing here is we want to set the claim. So as you can see from here, we have the user ID. We create instance of these claims and we set as an item in that. Then I want to return claim principal with the current claim that we have from the claims identity. And then it takes in the scheme. If we do not specify the scheme, we're going to have issue with that. Authentication will not take place. And then we're going to notify our state to tell the state that, hey, something happened. So get refreshed so that we're going to have a new auth state in there. Okay. So now that we are good, we're here. The next thing that we're going to be doing, let me just clear this off. So after you are done with this, the next thing that we're going to be doing is to create a login. Now, it's only a button that we need because here we want to tell the user that, hey, log in with Google. Okay, we are not going to provide any form. As soon as the button is clicked, we know we call the API to get us the URL and then open the browser straight for user to communicate with the Google API and not our API. So let's do that from our home component or home pages folder. Let's go and I think I should close this API because we're not working on that. And let me open the pages. We have 3 components. We have the counter. Let's use one here. Let's create one as login. So before we work on the login component, let's go to our import and let's add all the necessary injections that we need to do. So let's inject the following. So these are what we need to inject so we can use them in all the components. Now let's go back to our login and have our button and our method code. So when you have a look with this, you see from here, we are just having a simple button with a login async event wired up to this button. When it gets clicked, we want to create a client with our client name. So here we're going to be using constant.client because we are having that in the constant. So we need to use that there. Okay. So, and here we're going to navigate to this authorized route in our endpoint that we created. And in case it is successful, we want to navigate to the response. So now that we have this login, when you check our controller endpoint, we are having a callback that's going to be executed. So controller authorized controller. You see from here, this callback is sending to a component with a route of connect and having a user ID. So we need to go and create that. So in our component or in our pages, let's add one component with that. So in here, we are injecting our Auth state provider, and I think this can be sent to our import razor file. Okay. Now in here, we are also using this Auth state, which is going to get the current state of the user. We're going to take in a parameter of ID, as you can see from here. It's going to pass on from the header, not from the header as a query. That's a parameter from this. Okay. Then when the parameter set async, maybe when this changes, we want to create a client and then check if user is authenticated, they want to log in, because we want to navigate to the home page, because before you access this, users should not be authenticated, because this page is the process of authenticating the user. So if you're already authenticated, then what are you coming to do here? You see? Yeah, so we check if the parameter is not null. That is where we want to get this. We call this authorize the token. We pass in the ID to get our access token. When we have the access token, we want to read it over here as an access token. Then all that we're going to be doing is we are also calling this auth state changes to notify the auth state that, hey, you need to get changed. But before we do it, we need to save this item to the local storage. So let's save that. After we read it from here, we can use this local storage to do it. So we save it to local storage, and then we notify the auth state and navigate. Now, when we navigate to login, we need to reload it. So when we load it, that is when this is going to work well. If you don't reload it, although you are logged in, you're authenticated, but the current state here will not be reflected. So we need to make sure we have this set to true. Okay, so that is what we need to do here. Now let's go to that component and authorize it. So when you check our solution, you go to the app.razor, we need to authorize this route. So let's have this authorized. Now this should come from the namespace or the use statement of this for this authorized route view. Why you have issues here? I think this is a problem of the Visual Studio. At times we need to restart this or close and open it again, but never mind, this is going to work. You're doing the right thing. Okay, so let's go to the home page and maybe we can get claims. So maybe let me grab this. Let's go to solution. From the home page, you want to make sure you're authenticated. So maybe here we don't want to have login already because we have a button. So if you're authorized, that is where we need to get this. Now we still need this, so maybe we can put this in the import. Yeah, then this should stop. So you want to get a claim from the name identifier. Remember that when setting up the claims, we set up the ID, user ID as name identifier and want to grab it. So if you're authorized, we need to see it here. But if you are not, then you're going to see you are not authorized. Now let's manage our nav menu so we can include our login to direct to the component and also our logout button too. So solution. Then check from here your layout, nav menu, and in that we can have this. We can just copy and paste this and I'll change the route. This is quite simple. So I'm not going to waste time to do that. I have that you need to use this authorized view. Then if you're not authorized, you want to see this login. Now this login should go take you to login. But in case you're authorized, then log out. So this is not navigating to any component, but rather we're going to be having a method or event wired up to. Now what we need to do here, we need to just go and clear the token from the cookie storage, from the local storage, and then refresh or reload the page. So you can have a simple method to handle that. Now this is going to make that work. We still use the local storage service. We delete the item. So since we have this set as a constant, let's use that constant.key and to delete that and then navigate to the page, home page, whilst we reload it. So now as I speak, we're going to have the token in the local storage. Now let's go to our weather component. Now in that we're going to make an API call to this weather component, which is authenticated, right? And then we need to provide the access token to the header before we can move on with that. So click on the weather.razor component. In here, instead of injecting this HTTP client, no, we're not going to use that. We're going to use the client factory, so we can create our own client, add the token to the header, and then we can move on making an API call. So it means that I have this simple method. You can see when the page initializes, that is what we're doing here. We want to clear this one and then replace it with this by getting the token from the local storage. Let's have our constant use. Then if token is not equal to null, we want to create a client. Now on this client too, we need to use our constant name. So that is a constant. And then we're going to deserialize it because it has deserialized in there and we are deserializing it. This is HTTP client factory. Then after we get the token from here, we want to check here to see the header that we have, which is this client. We're going to add this token to the header as a form of what bearer, and then there is a token. After that, make an API call, which is get call to the endpoint, and now get the results here. So the main thing here is this. Okay, we are adding the token to the header before making an API or HTTP call. If we don't do that, we're going to have issue with it. Okay, so we need to do that. So the last part here is to go to our program from our client and then register all the services that we have created or installed and or using. So let's first get rid of this because you're going to be using a new package that we installed. We don't need to use this HTTP client. And let's register all the services here. So here we want to set the base address. So let's go to the solution. Then we want to check the API properties. What is the base address of this? Check the LAN settings and grab it here 7102 and go and add it here. So that is all. We need to add authorization call to. Then last part is let's add package service. So that is without services dot add Netcode-Hub thing dot add local storage service, and this should come from using packages, extensions, or local storage. Okay, so we are good. Now we're going to log in here. Not log in. Let's test this up by running it. So we're going to run both the client and now the server. And in here, let's set for configure startup project. Go to multiple startup. And then from API, start with that debugging Blazor 2 same. And then let's give it name, new. So we have it selected. And I'll click on this to run. So the app is ready now. Now let's see why we are having some issues. Let's go and check from the inspector console, and then it is saying that no authentication state provider has been registered, and that's true. We did not register that. So let's go and do that from. You can add it here. So as scope, then auth state provider, we specify a custom one that we created. Let's rerun. And I'm sure there's no issue again. So you can see you're not authorized. So you have login, you're not authorized login. Now, if I click on login, let's see, we come back to this login component, but I think the route did not do the right thing. Let's say from the login, we did not specify even route, right? I believe we did that. Good job. Okay, again. So our API is active. Then we have it here. So you can see we are logged in. So home, you are not authorized. When we check from your application, local storage, we have no data here. Now click on login, and then we have login with Google. If I click on this, it should make an API call, then it should return an authorized URL, as you can see from here. So it has directed me from my component, from my application to Google page, where I can sign in and choose to sign in with this app that we created. If I click on continue, say from the network tab, an API call will be sent to the API, and in there we're going to have access to our token. So it's gone. It's a flash. Okay, so you can see, hey, you're authorized now, isn't it? Now go and check application, and I see you can see you have the token as an access token. Then you have the user ID over here. You can decide to scrap the user ID as soon as you add it to the token authentication, so that you do not see it here. So you can decide to get rid of that. Now leave all this user the access token here. It's a choice that you need to choose how you want to build your system up to. And then if I click on logout, you see it is off, and then we reload the page, and then we have, hey, you're not authorized. Let's do this again, and then continue. Now we're going to have the key. Yes, so we do have it. That is our token. And then with this, we're going to make an API call with this to see whether the token will be added to the header. So go to the network tab, and then let's clear this. Check it out, weather forecast. Now we have this response here. Click on this, and now check it out. You can see we are having the token attached to the header. And if you do not do that, you're going to have 401. You can try that. You can stop adding this token to the header from the weather component, and I rerun this again, and you're going to see that, hey, you're going to have 401, meaning you're not authorized. And if I log out, we are done. Now, maybe if you're wondering whether if I refresh this, I'll not be authenticated. Let's see. You only log in, you refresh this, let's see whether, yeah, you are still authenticated. You call this, and you have the API, right? Now, from the home, you are still reload it, check it out, you are still authorized. That's great. And that is the claim that we specify the user ID, and we have it here. And that is it, guys. So we've seen how we can consume this authentication token from our client, which is the Blazor WebAssembly. I told you earlier that it could be Blazor, it could be any other framework application as well. Okay, so all that you need to do here is, after you consume the token, you add it to the header before you make an API call, and that is it. All right, so I believe you've learned something here, and if you have been able to do it as I have done, isn't it? If you have an issue with any of the code here, or trying to do it but you are facing some issue, put that issue in the comment below, and I'll attend to you, help you solve that. All right, so I'm going to catch up again. Stay tuned for the next, because, well, what is the next thing I'm going to talk about? I don't know. I don't know yet. But stay tuned, because I have a lot of goodies for you. And also, if you haven't subscribed, I always say this is the time. Give me a thumbs up to this video if you have learned something and you have been able to do this. Catch you up again. So then, take care.